Welcome to Soltron. This is my video review for my custom God King Ohger. So you can see this is like the final form, and it's probably hard to tell what's different about him. I did add a couple little bits here and there and alter some things, but I think he looks more proportional now, and it's easier to tell like what's going on with his body. I think he's still kind of a mess, but I think overall I've made some good changes to him. So we'll go over everything that's different now. All right, so first off, we'll go ahead and take off this backpack because it's very pointless and it just adds a lot of garbage to his back that he doesn't really need. But it's cool that all the pieces can actually still fit on him, so that's pretty good. All right, so let's start with his head. His head is now on, of course, ball joints, so he can actually articulate and look left and right. He's only got so much range because this front horn will like hit his like chest armor, but he can kind of get around it. But there's no reason he's going to need to turn to look that far anyway. So he can turn to look, but his visibility is going to be limited anyway. So that's one thing he can do. And if he needed to, he could look up. You could get kind of a down motion too if he needs to look like way far underneath him at his feet or whatever. That's also possible. Another big change to this guy is that I've given him these arms. It's kind of hard to see them because they're black on black, but he does have elbows, so he can bend these arms and they do articulate and have like bicep swivel, technically more like an elbow swivel. So you can see those arms are just attached here on the original King Ohger body, and they have like outward motion too, of course, so they can like do that. And then basically his original arms are kind of just used for holding his two god weapons, basically the scorpion and this other beetle. So they're kind of like, I like to think of them like underslung weapons. So he can move his arms forward, and then these weapons can also like click forward, and he can use them to attack. So he can get his cannon ready, and that can also be pointed forward and get ready to fire. So that's pretty cool. I think they're like underslung weapons, which is pretty great. And of course, that doesn't stay on very well. So I like the way that looks. And then you could use the original, like the transformation joint on the shoulder, and that could also pivot this whole section all at the same time. Yeah, the stability is definitely a problem with this weapon. But yeah, so I think that's pretty good because I think his original arms were just like a little bit too messy to really read his arms. I think he needed these actual arms just to make his body a little bit more readable. And then another weird thing I did was I made like these knee pads out of the golden hopper or whatever. So this kind of like fills out his thigh section. So just unclip that, and you can see like his knees are very skinny. And then these are just on ball joints, of course, so these can fold back together. You can still get the original, you can still get the original grasshopper leg. And then you could just clip that in normally. But I always thought these knee pads really never did anything. And I prefer having them spread out just because it helps his proportions a little bit, because his thighs were always so skinny in this mode. I think having these looks better. And you could like point them forward, make them more aggressive looking, I guess. All right, and then let's go down to our final change. I gave him a toe pivot, so it actually is pivoting in the opposite direction because now the treads are on the outside of his feet. They used to be on the inside of his feet. I always wanted the treads on the outside because I think they look better. And now the inside of his feet are nice and clean. So I think these actually read better as feet. So I think overall this improves his look a lot and makes him just a more cohesive looking Emperor of Destruction. I think he looks a lot cooler like this. And there's also a couple other little tweaks I did, so we'll show those off as well. But that's basically how the final form looks, and I enjoy this a lot. Okay, so here's the basic King Ohger. So there's something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to make the butterfly a shield. So now he can do that. So he can just have like this little tiny shield that kind of goes with his sword. So I think that looks pretty good. It's very easy. I just modified one of these so that it'll fit in his hand. And then the ball joint just goes right there. So now he can plug that in and he can have that shield going, which I think is pretty good. And then you can see like these chest pieces hide the combination joints really well. So you can't even see that in this mode. It does like require you to splay out the insect legs a little bit to get around them, but that's where that combiner port is, and that doesn't affect his articulation or anything at all. So that's the little mod I did to this guy. And then going on to this one, I forget what his name is, but he now has neck articulation that's not like detented, so he can actually look at all angles. He can look up. You can get like some downward motion from him as well. So now he's got ball joint neck, which I think looks pretty good. And then the other cool thing is now he has biceps, so that gives him a little bit more range of motion. So he's got perfectly good elbow joints now. They're a little bit, it makes his arms a little bit long, but oh well, I think it's fine. And then his toes still point. I didn't really do anything to this, but I could easily put ball joints in his hips and then ball joints in his knees. I just don't want to deal with it right now. But his articulation has been improved a little bit. And here he is in his tank mode, and this because the ball joint now has articulation, so he can actually aim his turret, so that's kind of cool. And then I did do a weird thing where I reversed the forearms, so I think these kind of like tread looking pieces are actually on the ground now, which I think looks better, so it looks more, a little bit more like a tank mode, but not much different otherwise. It's about the same. And then castle mode still works, it's just that his arms don't peg into his legs anymore, which is not that big a deal. He's still plenty stable, so it doesn't really matter. And then you can see I carved out like these little bottom bits just to give him that ankle tilt from earlier. And then you can see the grasshopper, he's totally fine. His spring-loaded gimmicks are still there, but now he uses ball joints to articulate his legs, so he can still do that. But he doesn't really use his spring-loaded gimmick anymore. So everything's nicely the way it needs to be. And then there are these two combiner joints for the final form. I haven't really found a place for those, but I guess it would be cool if these little doors opened up. I could just drop them right inside there. So I'll probably work on that. Yep, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So I just like to take these and just use these to break off the plastic. Bit by bit, just take out all this support material, and that'll give space for the adapters to fit in. Okay, so now there's enough space. You could just drop these little adapter pieces in there, and then this cover basically slides in. So you slide that there, and then you slide the two panels together, and that's basically how it fits, and now it's nicely stored inside the body. All right, so that's that. I hope you liked this new custom. I think it's better than its original ultimate form. And remember to check my link for things that I'm selling, and I'll see you in the next one.